There was a time when Princess Chulabhorn seemed to have everything a royal life could offer.
Marry her bodyguard.
She was born into Thailand's most powerful family, became a highly respected scientist, and grew up as the daughter of one of the country's most beloved kings.
And eventually, they
but
got
in
married.
1996, she made an unusually public decision.
But what happened
she spoke about the
inside
collapse
that
of her marriage
and
said that physical abuse had
nation.
made it impossible for the relationship to continue.
Have to endure?
The man she had chosen to marry was not a prince.
To file for divorce?
He was a Royal
Thai
Air Force officer.
Today? Watch
and
the
for
full
years,
video
she had
to
tried to
out.
make the marriage work.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
So what happened between
them? Let's get started.
Why did a Thai princess choose to marry a commoner despite the expectations surrounding the royal family?
Immediately.
And after the marriage ended, how did Chulabhorn rebuild her life and become known for something far beyond her royal title?
His life has been associated
this is the story of Princess
Chulabhorn
and
controversies.
Princess Chulabhorn Waylelak was born on July 4, 1957, in Bangkok. She was the youngest daughter of King Bhumibol Adulyadej and Queen Sirikit, and the younger sister of the future King Maha Vajiralongkorn.
Life to
growing up in the Thai royal
people.
family meant living under extraordinary expectations.
Filled with more pain
but Chulabhorn developed an interest that would eventually become one of the defining parts of her life.
Chulabhorn was born on July
Science.
4th, 1957
Rather than simply following the
Bangkok,
traditional path
the
expected of a princess, she pursued chemistry with remarkable determination.
From a very
in
young
1979,
age,
she graduated from KSET University with first-class honors in organic chemistry.
A serious blood disorder.
She then continued her education at Mahidol University and earned a doctorate in organic chemistry in 1985.
And some of her facial
academic achievements soon attracted
control.
international recognition.
These conditions were believed to have been
received
caused
the UNESCO
by the
Albert Einstein Medal and later became an honorary fellow of Britain's Royal Society of Chemistry.
In addition, she had almost
but
no
her education
friends
was
during
not
her
simply a collection of
Even
titles
though she was
and
a
awards.
Princess, no children
Chulabhorn
wanted to play
science
with her.
to have a practical
Despite
purpose.
This, Princess Chulabhorn
she helped establish the Chulabhorn Research Institute, creating a center for scientific research
After
and
graduating
international
from
cooperation in
University
Thailand.
in 1979,
her professional life
with a
was
Bachelor
taking
of Science in Organic Chemistry,
but privately,
with
another
the highest
chapter was
honors.
beginning.
She continued her studies at
Chulabhorn had
Mahidol
fallen in
University,
love.
one of Thailand's
His name
most
was
prestigious research
Virayatishayasuran.
institutions.
He was a
In
Royal Thai Air Force
1985,
officer,
she earned her
and
doctorate
he was not
in
a member
chemistry.
of the Thai nobility.
She was the first princess
For a
in the
member of the
history
royal
the
family
Thai
that
royal
made the
family
relationship
to
significant.
ever receive a doctorate.
Marriage inside
Despite
a royal
her many
family was never simply a
one
private
part of
matter.
her life remained painfully
Rank,
empty.
tradition, family
Love.
expectations, and
Because
royal
of her
protocol
congenital
all
health
carried weight.
conditions, many
But
noblemen were
Chulabhorn wanted to
discouraged
marry
from
the man
dating
she
her,
had chosen.
and she struggled to find
And
someone who
eventually,
would choose
her
her
father,
for who she
King
was.
Bhumibol Adulyadej,
Eventually,
gave his approval.
she met a man named
On January 7,
Virayatishayasuran.
1982,
He was
Princess
not a nobleman,
Chulabhorn and
but a
Virayat were
commoner.
married.
Some reports say
The decision
he was
was
an
especially
officer in the
notable
Royal
because
Thai Air
Chulabhorn was
Force,
allowed to
and
retain
that they
her
met
royal
during a
status after
lecture.
marrying a commoner.
Other reports say he was
For
a
a
member
while,
of her
the marriage
royal
appeared to
guard.
begin normally.
Whatever the exact
Then
circumstances,
came the children.
the princess fell
In
deeply in love with him,
1982,
and their
the couple
relationship
welcomed their
developed
first daughter,
quickly.
Princess
They eventually
Chulabhorn.
decided to marry.
2 years later,
However,
their
the
second
marriage
daughter,
faced
Princess
opposition from her
Aditadorn
parents,
Kittikan, was
King
born.
Bhumibol Adulyadej
From the outside,
and Queen
the family
Sirikit.
appeared to have entered
Later,
a new and
it was
happy
revealed
chapter.
that Virayud had already
But the story
been
would
married.
eventually take a very different
Surprisingly, the
direction.
princess did not mind
The early
and was
years
willing
of the
to wait
marriage
for him to
passed.
divorce his wife and come
Chulabhorn
to
continued
her.
her scientific work
Virayud
while
eventually
raising 2
did so.
daughters.
King Bhumibol,
But over time,
despite his
the relationship
reservations,
became
despite the
increasingly
differences
troubled.
in their rank and
The
backgrounds,
details of a
gave his
royal
blessing,
marriage are rarely
and he
visible
went
to
even
the public.
further. Knowing that
For
Thai
years,
royal
much of
custom
what happened
required a
inside the
princess who married a
relationship remained
commoner to
private.
give up her royal title.
Then, by the
he broke that precedent
mid-1990s,
entirely.
the situation had
He
reached a
granted
point
his
where the
youngest
couple could
daughter
no longer
special
continue
permission
together.
to keep her title
In
and her
October
royal
1996,
privileges even after
Princess
the marriage.
Chulabhorn discussed the
On
breakdown
January
of her
7,
marriage in a videotaped
1982,
interview that
Princess
was broadcast
Chulabhorn
nationally.
married Virayud in
For
a
a member of
magnificent
Thailand's
ceremony
royal
at the
family,
Grand Palace
speaking
in
publicly
Bangkok.
about such a private matter
Chulabhorn
was
wore
highly
gold
unusual.
brocade lined with burnt
But she
orange
chose to
silk.
explain her decision.
Virayud wore his white
She
officer's
described her
uniform.
husband as
In the
hot-tempered and
early
said
years
that he
of their
did not try
marriage,
to
the
understand
couple
her.
appeared happy.
Most seriously,
In October
she said that he had
1982,
physically abused
they
her.
welcomed their first daughter,
She also
Princess
explained that
Reba.
she had repeatedly
2
tried
years
to
later,
reconcile
in
with him.
1984, their second
But there was a
daughter,
limit to what she
Princess
was
Dida,
willing to
was
endure.
born. As time
Once physical
passed,
violence
however,
had become
the
part of the
marriage
relationship,
reportedly
she
began
said they
to
could no
deteriorate.
longer remain together.
Chulabhorn and Virayud
The marriage
were
was
said to
dissolved
argue
in
almost every day.
1996.
Because
For
Virayud had
Chulabhorn,
limited education,
this was not simply
while
the end of a
Chulabhorn
royal
was a
marriage.
highly educated and elite
It was
woman,
the end of a
the two
relationship she
reportedly
had tried
held
to
very
preserve.
different views on
And
many
because
subjects,
she had spoken publicly
and
about the
disagreements over
circumstances,
everyday
the
matters
divorce
became
became one of the
frequent.
most discussed personal
Virayud's
chapters of her life.
personality also reportedly
But what happened
changed
afterward
over
is just
time.
as important.
He had believed that marrying into
Chulabhorn
the
did
royal
not allow the
family
divorce to
would
become
earn
the
him
central
the king's
definition of her
favor
public
and help him
identity.
advance quickly in his
She
official
returned her
career.
attention to the work she had been
However,
building
after the
for
marriage,
years.
his career remained
Science,
largely unchanged.
Research,
Aside from being respectfully
medicine,
addressed as Prince
and public
Consort by the
service,
palace staff,
the Chulabhorn
marriage
Research
appeared to bring him
Institute
few
continued to
practical
develop as a
benefits.
center for
After a
scientific
long
research
period
and
of frustration,
cooperation.
Virayud began to
Her
behave
interests
abusively
also
during
increasingly
disagreements.
included medical
He was
research,
also said to spend
particularly
nights
cancer
away from
research.
home seeking
The
entertainment.
Chulabhorn
And
Cancer
when
Center
Princess
later became
Chulabhorn
part of that
complained about
broader
his
effort,
behavior,
providing
he physically
specialized cancer
assaulted her.
services and supporting
Princess
medical care
Chulabhorn
and research.
endured these difficulties
This
for
was a very
years
different kind
and
of royal
repeatedly
legacy.
attempted to preserve the marriage.
It was not built around
However,
ceremonies
she was
or titles.
ultimately unable to restore
It was built
the
around
relationship.
laboratories, researchers,
Heartbroken,
doctors,
she chose
and
to
patients.
divorce Virayud
And
raise their
Chulabhorn
two
continued to
daughters
put
on
science
her
at the
own.
center of her public
In
work.
October 1996,
Her career
in
also
a
brought her
videotaped
international
interview
recognition.
broadcast on national television,
Scientists and
she told the
institutions
truth.
around the world
We
worked with
really
her and with
cannot stay together
organizations
anymore.
connected to her
He is
research efforts.
hot-tempered and does not try to understand.
For a princess, it
Most
was an
of all,
unusual
he uses
path.
physical abuse.
But
I have
perhaps
always
that was
tried to
exactly
reconcile
what made
with
her
him.
public life
But when
so
it reached the
distinctive.
point of physical abuse,
Her royal
we could
position
not
opened
remain
doors.
together.
Her
This
scientific
relationship caused
achievements gave her
Chulabhorn
something of
great
her own
pain.
to contribute.
She was unable to recover
And after the
from
collapse of her
psychological
marriage,
trauma
that work
for a
became
long
even
time
more central
after
to her
the
life.
divorce. Several
But
years later,
Chulabhorn's
she
life
met
did not become
Chaishan
easier simply
Locharenkul,
because the
a
marriage
chemistry
was over.
professor from Chulabhorn
Over the
University.
years, she faced serious
Unlike her
health
previous
challenges.
relationship, this connection
Her
was
medical
based on
problems
shared
required
interests,
treatment and affected
for a
her
time,
mobility.
many people remembered her as
Yet even as her
appearing
own
happier
health became
and
more
smiling
difficult,
more
her
frequently.
involvement in public
However,
and scientific
fate
work
seemed
continued.
determined to continue testing
Her name
Chulabhorn.
remained closely connected
After
with
a
medical
period
research,
of passionate
cancer
romance,
care, and
the
scientific
professor suddenly
education in
disappeared
Thailand.
from her life without warning.
That commitment is
It was
important
later
when looking
revealed
back
that
at her
he had
life.
become a monk.
The divorce
Despite
could
the
easily have
heartbreak she
become the
endured,
story that defined
Princess
her.
Chulabhorn did not allow
Instead,
personal pain
it became
to
one
define
chapter
the
in
rest
a
of
much
her
larger
life.
life.
Instead,
There
she
was
devoted
also
herself
another
to
important
serving the people
responsibility.
of Thailand.
Her
She
two daughters
established the
continued to
Chulabhorn
grow up within the
Foundation
Thai royal
with the goal
family.
of improving quality
The
of
end
life
of their
through
parents'
science
marriage
and
therefore
technology.
did not erase the
After
family's
recognizing
connection.
the high rate of cancer in
For
Thailand,
Chulabhorn, life
she
after
also
divorce
helped
involved
establish a
balancing her
cancer research and
responsibilities as a
treatment
mother,
center
a
to
member of the
support
royal
medical
family,
research
and a scientist.
and improve access to
And
care
over the
for
following
patients.
decades,
Over
the public
years,
saw
Princess
increasingly less of
Chulabhorn
the
has
failed
faced
marriage
several
and more of the
serious
work
health
she continued to
conditions,
do.
including systemic
Her
lupus,
scientific institutions
erythematosus,
expanded their activities.
an autoimmune disease that
Medical
can affect
projects
many
developed.
parts of the body. As her health
Researchers
declined,
received
her
opportunities to
mobility
collaborate.
became increasingly limited.
And her public
Today,
duties
at the
increasingly
age of
focused on
69,
helping
she relies
communities
on a
and supporting
wheelchair for
health-related
mobility and
initiatives.
requires assistance when
That
walking.
became especially
Despite
significant
these
as Thailand
challenges,
faced
she has
continuing
continued to
challenges
visit
in
slums
healthcare.
and welfare homes in
Chulabhorn's
Thailand,
work connected
donating money and
scientific research
supplies
with
to people
practical
in
public
need
needs.
and offering support to
The
countless
goal was not
individuals.
simply to produce
Her
academic
work has helped many
discoveries.
Thai people regain
It was
hope
to use
and
knowledge to
courage
improve
in
people's
difficult
lives.
circumstances.
That philosophy
After the
helps
divorce,
explain
her
why her
former
legacy
husband
is so
began a new
closely
chapter in his
associated with
life.
science.
Public records indicate
But there is
that
another
he
reason her
remarried
story
in
continues to
1997
attract attention.
and later moved to Virginia,
She did not
United
fit
States,
neatly into the
where he
image many
operates
people
a
have
Thai
of royalty.
restaurant. He is also
She was
reported
born
to
into a
maintain a
palace,
good
but
relationship
pursued
with his
chemistry.
two daughters.
She had
Princess
a royal
Chulabhorn's
title,
story
but married a
reminds us
commoner.
that suffering, pain,
She experienced
and
a troubled
heartbreak do
marriage,
not have to
but eventually
define a
spoke
person's
about it
entire
publicly.
life. What else
And despite serious health challenges, she continued to appear in public service and scientific activities.
Princess Dita was
Each
born.
part of her life seems
As
to tell a
time
different
passed,
story.
However, the marriage
The
reportedly
princess,
began to
the
deteriorate.
scientist,
Chulabhorn
the
and
wife,
Virayud were said to argue
mother,
almost every day.
the public servant,
because Virayud had
and
limited
the woman
education,
who had to rebuild
while
her
Chulabhorn
life after
was
a
a
painful
highly
marriage.
educated and elite woman.
That complexity
the two
is what makes her
reportedly
story
held
worth
very
examining.
different views on many
Because
subjects,
if we focus only
and
on the
disagreements
divorce,
over
we miss
everyday
most of the
matters
person.
became frequent.
And if we focus only
Virayud's
on the royal
personality
title, we
also
miss the struggles
reportedly
behind
changed
it.
over time.
Princess
He believed
Chulabhorn's
that
life
marrying
was
into
far
the royal
more complicated
family
than either
would earn
image
him the king's
suggests.
favor and help him
Today,
advance quickly
Princess
in his official
Chulabhorn is
career.
69 years old.
However, after the marriage,
Her health has
his
presented
career
serious
remained
challenges,
largely
and
unchanged.
her mobility has become
Aside from being
increasingly limited.
respectfully addressed as
But her
Prince
public work
Consort
has
by the
continued.
palace staff, the
Official
marriage appeared
reports
to
and
bring him
recent years have documented her involvement in scientific, medical, and humanitarian activities, including royal medical missions and projects connected with public health.
Away from home seeking
That persistence says something important about the way her life unfolded.
About his behavior,
the
he
marriage
physically
ended.
assaulted her.
The divorce was painful,
endured these difficulties
but neither event
for
became
years
the final chapter.
And repeatedly attempted to
Instead,
preserve the marriage.
Chulabhorn continued
However,
working in the
she was
field she had
ultimately
chosen long
unable
before
to
the marriage
restore
ever
the
began.
relationship.
Science became one of the strongest parts of her identity.
And raise their two
Medical
daughters
research
on her
became
own.
another.
In October
And
1996,
service to the people of Thailand became a central part of her public life.
On national television,
Looking back,
she told
the most
truth.
interesting question may
really
not be why a princess married a
anymore.
commoner.
He is hot-tempered and
It
does
may
not
be
try
what
to
she did
understand.
after that marriage failed.
Most of all, he uses physical
She could have been
abuse.
remembered
I have
primarily
always
for a
tried to
controversial
reconcile
royal
with him,
marriage and a
but when
highly
it reached the
unusual
point
divorce.
of physical abuse,
But
we could not
decades of
remain
scientific
together.
and humanitarian
This
work changed
relationship
the
caused
picture.
Chulabhorn great pain.
Her life became
She
larger
was
than the
unable to
scandal.
recover from the
And
psychological
that is
trauma
perhaps the most
for a
important
long
part of her
time
story.
after the divorce.
Princess
Several years
Chulabhorn's
later,
marriage was
she met
one
Chaishan
chapter.
Losharenkul,
Her
a
work
chemistry
became
professor
another.
from Chulalongkorn University.
Her health struggles became another.
Unlike her previous relationship,
And through
this
all of
connection
them,
was
she
based on
continued to
shared
live under the
interests.
expectations
And for a
that came with
time,
being
many people
born into the
remembered
Thai
her
royal
as appearing
family.
happier and
Royal
smiling
life can
more
look very
frequently.
different from the outside.
However, fate seemed determined to
Palaces,
continue
ceremonies,
testing
and titles
Chulabhorn.
can create the impression
After a
that those who
period of
live inside
passionate
them are
romance,
protected from
the professor
ordinary human
suddenly
problems.
disappeared from her life
But
without warning.
Chulabhorn's story
It
shows
was later
otherwise.
revealed that he had become
Love
a monk.
can fail.
Despite the heartbreak
A marriage
she
can
endured,
become painful.
Princess Chulabhorn did not
Health
allow
can
personal
change the
pain
course
to
of a life.
define the rest of her life.
And even someone
Instead,
born into
she devoted
extraordinary
herself
privilege can
to
face
serving
difficult
the people
choices.
of Thailand.
What
She established the
matters, in the
Chulabhorn
end,
Foundation
is what comes after
with the
those
goal of
moments.
improving quality of life
For Princess
through science
Chulabhorn,
and technology.
what came after her divorce
After
was not
recognizing the
withdrawal
high
from
rate of
public
cancer
life.
in Thailand,
It
she
was
also
continued
helped
work,
establish a cancer research
continued
and treatment
research,
center to support
continued
medical
service,
research and improve
and a
access
legacy
to
that
care
increasingly
for
rests
patients.
on what she
Over
contributed,
the years,
rather than
Princess
simply on the
Chulabhorn
family
has faced
into which she
several
was
serious
born.
health conditions,
The royal
including
marriage
systemic
ended in
lupus,
1996.
erythematosus, an
But Princess
autoimmune
Chulabhorn's
disease that
story
can
did
affect
not end
many
with it.
parts of the body.
If
As her
anything,
health
the
declined,
decades that
her
followed showed that
mobility
her
became
identity was much
increasingly
larger
limited.
than the marriage that
Today,
once
at the age
attracted
of
so much
69,
attention.
she relies on a wheelchair
was a
for
princess.
mobility and requires assistance
was a
when
scientist.
walking. Despite these
She was a mother.
challenges, she has continued to
And
visit
above all,
slums
she
and
continued
welfare
to serve in
homes
the areas
Thailand,
she had chosen to make
donating
meaningful.
money and supplies to people
That
in
is
need
why her story
and
is
offering
worth
support
remembering.
to countless individuals.
Not simply because
her
she
work
married
has
a
helped many
commoner.
Thai people regain
Not
hope
simply
and
because the
courage
marriage
in
ended,
difficult circumstances.
but because after one of the most
After the
painful
divorce,
chapters
her
of her
former
private
husband
life,
began a
she
new
continued to
chapter in
build a
his
public
life.
life of her
Public
own.
records indicate
And
that
perhaps
he
that is
remarried
the most
in
lasting lesson from her
1997
story.
and later moved to Virginia,
A difficult
United
chapter
States,
can change a
where
person's
he
life,
operates a Thai restaurant.
but it does not have
He's
to
also
become the
reported
ending.
to maintain a good
If
relationship
you enjoyed
with
this
his two
story
daughters.
and want to discover
Princess
more little-known
Chulabhorn's
stories
story
from royal
reminds us
families
that
around the
suffering,
world,
pain,
subscribe
and
to the
heartbreak
channel and
do
turn
not
on
have to define
notifications.
a person's entire
More
life.
stories are coming.